Unbelievable transformation. Black woman exposes billionaire's prejudice. Cancels 3B deal forever. Gia stood behind the counter of her restaurant, Gia's Soul Kitchen, stirring a pot of gumbo, the rich aroma swirling around the cozy space filled with vinyl booths and laughter. Her warm smile was the pulse of Sweet Auburn, an inviting reminder of home. Bills piled high, but her spirit soared for every plate served. She was honoring her father's dream, lifting her community, offering solace in each bite. But then, the news struck like thunder on a clear day. A $3 billion revitalization project was on the horizon. Sterling Blake, the billionaire developer, was about to overhaul their beloved neighborhood. The chatter in the restaurant was electric. "Can you believe it?" customers exclaimed, their eyes sparkling with hope. The thought of new shops, jobs, and possibilities lured them. Yet, in the pit of her stomach, warning bells rang that as Gia attended the town hall meetings, the excitement among her neighbors felt palpable like the first burst of summer. A little girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, the excitement of new parks and playgrounds shining in her young eyes. But as she listened, unease crept in. The whispers of her elders floated through the air, warning about displacement, of families being pushed out for progress that came at a cost. The stories of her great-grandfather forced from his ancestral lands echoed painfully in her heart. She knotted her hands as pressure mounted. Who would protect the spirit of Sweet Auburn? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment arrived, a pivot in her path. The gymnasium filled with voices as Sterling stood on stage, his lavish suit glittering under the fluorescent lights. Gia's heart pounded. She stood, feeling every pair of eyes on her, her voice trembling but resolute. What about the people who get left behind? What happens to families like mine? The room fell into a thick hush, a collective breath held tightly. Their eyes bore into Sterling. He fumbled, dismissed her with grand verbal gestures, but Gia pressed on, her words sharp like the edge of a knife. Do you even know the history of this land you want to develop? You can't just erase who we are. A murmur of admiration rippled through the crowd, an echo of their shared heritage. Suddenly, a fire ignited in Gia as she pulled out her phone. With hands shaking, she streamed live, her voice raw, her heart aflame. This isn't just business. Our history is at stake. The comments exploded, supporters rallying behind her call to action, hearts swelling with a mix of fear and hope. As Gia spoke for those who felt unheard, tears streamed down her cheeks, a mix of anger and resolve on her face. The atmosphere felt electric, a boiling pot of dreams and despair, awaiting the outcome. Would they stand together, or be swept away by forces beyond their control? The battle lines had been drawn. Would Sweet Auburn emerge renewed, or would they lose the essence that made their home truly special? The meeting ended, but the air hung thick with anticipation. What would happen next? The following days spiraled into a whirlwind for Gia. Her live stream had gone viral, drawing attention not just from her neighborhood but from beyond the city limits. Social media exploded with support, her words resonating in the hearts of many who felt the sting of gentrification. "Stay strong, Gia, and we love Sweet Auburn," flooded her notifications. The outpouring of empathy felt like a warm embrace, but the reality of Sterling's plans loomed just as large. At the restaurant, she noticed a shift. Customers who had been regulars for years shared stories of their families, of grandparents who worked hard to keep this very community alive. They were riled up, passionate, and energized. The lunch rush turned into a gathering of activists, brainstorming how to keep Sweet Auburn from becoming another footnote in a history of forgotten neighborhoods. "Gia, we can't let this go," said Marcus, her childhood friend and now a community activist. His eyes shone with determination as he sifted through hand-drawn flyers to organize a rally. "We need to show them we're united." She wanted to shout yes, but dread crept back in. Could they actually alter the plans of a man who wielded billions? She shoved that fear deep down. She had to believe in their strength. Let us do it, Marcus. We'll rally. We'll make them listen. Preparation began in earnest. Pictures of Sweet Auburn, posters with the slogan Save Our Home, and even a petition circulated. The community came together, diverse voices joining as one pulse of hope. There were elders recounting their stories, young kids filling the air with laughter, and individuals sharing their dreams for the future visions that didn't involve leaving the only home they'd ever known. But amidst this whirlwind of unity, Gia felt an ache of anxiety. What if their voices were drowned out by money and politics? Sterling was formidable, and the city council was swayed by gleaming promises and dollar signs. The threat of losing their neighborhood felt more tangible than ever. As the day of the rally approached, her heart raced. She was terrified and exhilarated all at once. On the morning of the event, the sun spilled golden light across Sweet Auburn, illuminating the vibrant murals and storefronts that held generations of memories. Gia stood at the front, taking in the sea of faces as people gathered. She felt an electric energy in the air, a mixture of hope and fear, each heartbeat echoing with the love they shared for this place. How often do we get to stand for something that matters? She thought as her voice broke through the crowd. Today we remind them that we won't be pushed aside. Today we fight. As chants erupted from the crowd, her spirit soared. They marched through the streets, holding signs that bore messages of resistance and resilience. One elderly woman, cane in hand, shouted, "We are the heart of this community." Tears welled up in Gia's eyes. Just then, her phone buzzed an alert. It was a message from a prominent local journalist, asking for a last-minute interview. Without thinking, she responded. "I'm ready to speak," she typed, feeling a surge of adrenaline. This was her moment, and she would make it count as Gia stepped aside, preparing for her answer to the world. The ground beneath her felt shifty. Would this voice rise high enough? Would it be enough? She stood alone for a moment, focused on the enormity of their message. But before she could gather her thoughts, a loud rumble pierced the air, an unusual sound. Everyone turned toward the main street. A convoy of sleek black cars rolled up, darkness surrounding them. Sterling Blake emerged, flanked by a mix of bewildered officials and camera crews. The sight sent a shockwave through the crowd. The tension became palpable, a sudden jolt of fear and anticipation rippling through the gathering. What did he want? Was he there to speak, to negotiate? Or was it something darker? Gia's heart raced. This was not going how she imagined. The battle was far from over, and the stakes had just risen. "Gia, over here. Are you ready?" Marcus called. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. The eyes of her community and the pressing media leaned in. She could feel the weight of their hope on her shoulders. What would she say? Would it be enough to withstand the storm ahead? As she opened her mouth to speak, the moment felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. Would she boost their spirits or be crushed under the weight of this monumental fight? A hush swept over the crowd as Gia stood there, the air thick with tension. All eyes were on her, waiting for the words that could either uplift or doom them. Her mind raced, thoughts colliding, uncertainty gnawing at her resolve. Just then, Sterling Blake stepped forward, a confident smile plastered on his face, trying to appear unbothered. "I see a passionate gathering here," he began, his voice booming over the murmurs. "But change is inevitable. Progress requires sacrifice." His words cut through the air like a knife. Gia felt a mix of anger and determination rise within her. Progress? At what cost? Her community had given everything for that little corner of the world they called home, and now he stood there, speaking about sacrifice as if their lives were mere statistics. "Excuse me." Gia's voice pierced through the crowd, strong despite the trembling in her heart. "You call this progress when it means pushing us out of our community? This is our home, not just a property on your portfolio." The collective gasp from the crowd was palpable. Sweet Auburn isn't some relic to be erased. "We are alive, we matter," she continued, emboldened by their murmurs of agreement. The energy shifted. Her words resonated deep within their souls. As her voice grew louder, so did their cheers. Blake's smile faltered slightly, his confidence shaken. "You're misinformed. We're bringing jobs. Gia interrupted, her hands gripping the edge of the podium. "Jobs that will benefit outsiders while leaving us behind. You focus on profits while you crush us. We're not statistics, we're people." A cry of approval erupted from the crowd. People were on their feet, fists raised high, joining in solidarity. In that moment, she felt the power of community, a force stronger than any bank balance. She was more than a voice. She was their heart. "Your vision isn't our vision," Gia shouted, feeling the adrenaline pulse through her veins. "You may have power and wealth, but you can't erase our history. We have stories, love, families built on this soil. You can't put a price on that." Sterling adjusted his stance, his expression hardening. "We can find common ground, Gia. Let us not turn this into a confrontation. Think about the future." "No." Gia's voice was fierce. "The future includes us. You think you can silence us with money? We won back down. Not now, not ever." The crowd erupted with chants once again, echoing her words. "We won back down. Save our home." They rallied around her, voices rising like a wave. Marcus, filled with pride, stood nearby, his eyes shining with admiration. Gia felt like a warrior, emboldened by their unity, knowing that this was just the beginning of something monumental. But just as the atmosphere shifted, a flash of doubt hit her. Would this be enough to pierce through the walls of greed? Could they truly hold back a titan like Sterling? Suddenly, a commotion erupted from behind her. What's happening? She wondered as the crowd began to murmur uneasily. A few folks pointed toward the entrance of a nearby building. Gia turned, eyes wide with disbelief that a rival team of reporters had set up across the street, recording the chaos. And she could see a familiar face among them, an investigative journalist known for exposing corruption. A slight tremor of excitement ran through her. Was this a lifeline? "Gia, they want to interview you," Marcus shouted, motioning toward the reporter. The realization hit her hard. If she could capture the narrative and the public's attention, maybe they could change the tide. Her heart raced as she locked eyes with Marcus. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to amplify their message beyond the crowd before her. But could she maintain her composure under the scrutiny of the cameras? As she took a step toward the reporter, she felt the palpable energy of her community behind her. The fight was far from over. Would her voice transform fear into hope once more? Would she find the strength to turn this moment into a real catalyst for change? As questions loomed, she pressed forward, determined to seize this moment and turn it into the victory Sweet Auburn desperately needed. Gia's heart raced as she approached the reporter. The camera lights flickered like fireflies, capturing the intensity of the moment. She could feel her community behind her, each face a map of hope and heartbreak, a testament to a history that refused to be buried. "Gia, can you share your thoughts on what is happening here today?" the journalist asked, his pen poised, ready to capture her words. She took a deep breath, the weight of her thoughts crashing against her chest. "This isn't just about land or money," she began, her voice steady but passionate. "This is about our lives, our families, and our future. Sweet Auburn is more than just a place. It's our home. We aren't just fighting for bricks and mortar. We're fighting for our right to exist in the place we love." The crowd erupted in support, their voices harmonizing with hers, chanting her name. "Gia, Gia." The energy surged, electrifying her spirit. It wasn't merely her voice anymore. It was their collective heartbeat echoing through the plaza. "Sterling Blake may have the power and the wealth, but he doesn't have our history, our resilience. We've got stories that span generations," she declared, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in her bones. The journalist's eyes gleamed with excitement. "What do you say to those who argue that progress comes with a price? Progress shouldn't come at the expense of people's lives," she replied, anger fueling her words. You can't just erase communities to make way for buildings that serve the privileged. That's not progress. That's oppression. We deserve better than to be treated like numbers on a financial report. A ripple of shock washed over the crowd. People nodded, absorbing what she said. Struck a chord. They were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for all marginalized voices suffocated by greed. Just then, a shout cut through the air. "Look!" Someone yelled, pointing toward a group of individuals approaching. Gia turned, her breath catching in her throat. It was a collection of her neighbors' families she had known forever, holding banners that read, "Our lives matter, and Sweet Auburn is home." The sight filled her with fierce determination. The reporter captured the moment, his camera clicking furiously as families joined hands, faces painted with resolve. This was turning into something bigger, an inevitable tide that could drown out the corporate monoliths looming over her community. "Gia, what's your next move?" The journalist pressed, capturing the raw energy of the moment. She looked out at the diverse faces in the crowd, saw the hope in their eyes, and felt the fire stirring within herself. "We won't just stand by and watch our community be dismantled. We're going to gather signatures, reach out to other neighborhoods, and if necessary, take legal action. We will not stop until our voices are heard." The crowd erupted into cheers again, their spirits lifted high. In that wave of emotion, Gia felt an unfamiliar sense of clarity. It was not just about preservation, it was about empowerment. They had a chance to change their narrative, to shape their destinies, as excitement surged through her veins. The journalist lifted his microphone, ready to conclude. "This is far from over. Gia and her community are poised for a battle that could redefine what progress means for Sweet Auburn. Will they be able to build a future together, or will their fight be in vain?" Gia couldn't suppress the fire in her chest as she faced the camera. "This is just the beginning. We will rise." But with her declaration lingering in the air, another figure stepped into view. A frown on his face, it was Sterling Blake, flanked by his legal team. A look of determination etched across his features. "The game is just starting," he shouted, his voice cutting through the sea of cheers. The crowd turned, the mood shifting like a sudden storm. Gi's resolve hardened. She was ready for the fight ahead. But could they truly hold the line against the relentless power of a billionaire determined to erase their existence? The next chapter of their struggle loomed, more daunting than ever. Could they stand firm against the looming threat? Gia felt the tension in the air shift like a heavy curtain falling over a stage. Sterling Blake stood there, flanked by well-dressed lawyers, his presence a stark contrast to the families surrounding her. The cheers began to fade, replaced by murmurs of uncertainty. "Let us not kid ourselves," Blake began, opening his hands wide as if trying to embrace the crowd. "This is a business decision, and business is about growth. There's nothing personal here." His voice rolled like thunder, echoing off the buildings around them. Gia clenched her fists at her sides. "And what about us?" she shouted back, anger radiating from her. "Is progress really just your bottom line? These are our lives you're talking about." His smile was cold, calculative. "I'm sure there are plenty of high-rises that would welcome you." Another member of the crowd, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Thompson, stepped forward. "You don't understand. We're not just some project for you to dissect. We're families. This is history growing up in the heart of this community." His voice quivered with each word. The crowd rallied behind him, standing taller as more neighbors chimed in with affirmations. "Mr. Thompson is right," Gia exclaimed, her voice rallying the energy back into the plaza. "We are not statistics to be rewritten or families to be displaced for profit." The passion in her words ignited a fire in everyone, and the cheers erupted again, louder and fiercer. But Blake wasn't swayed. "Let us be clear. My plans for this redevelopment will happen with or without your approval. You can resist, but in the end, it's the law and the money that will dictate the outcome." Gia could feel her heart pounding, emotions swirling dangerously close to despair. She knew they were fighting a giant, but she had never felt more alive than in this moment, surrounded by her community's strength. "Don't back down, Gia," shouted a young girl in the front row, waving her sign defiantly. "We're with you." "Yes." "Together," Gia shouted back, waves of determination crashing through her. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. If we blend into the shadows, they'll succeed in pushing us out." Blake's smirk faded as he surveyed the impassioned crowd, their hope reflected in their eyes. For a fleeting moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. "Fine," he huffed, taking a step back. "You make a scene, but the wheels are in motion. You have your little protests, but a petition 1T stopped the bulldozers." He turned, marching back toward his legal entourage, dismissing the power of her community with a wave of his hand. But Gia watched, her breath controlled. Fear and rage coiled together in her chest as the crowd began to echo her words. Gia spotted a police officer approaching, worry etched on his face. "We can't let them clash," he said sternly, his eyes darting between Blake's group and the determined crowd. Gia raised her hands, rallying the crowd before he could speak further. "We're not here for violence. This fight is for our lives, and we will keep it civil." The officer nodded, finally understanding the depth of their struggle. The atmosphere shifted again, this time filled with an electric kind of hope. They had a voice, they had unity, and they had strength they didn't realize they possessed. But as the crowd began discussing the next steps, petitions, rallies, community meetings, Gia couldn't shake the unease stirring in her stomach. The fight against Blake was just beginning, but they had to be smarter, more strategic. "Gia, what now?" someone called, eyes wide with anticipation. She took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of leadership weighing on her. "We build connections," she exclaimed. "We need to reach out to other communities who face the same fight. We'll show them we're stronger when we stand together." As cheers erupted once again, Gia cast a glance toward the horizon. She sensed bigger winds blowing their way. This was just the tip of the iceberg. But what she didn't expect was the departure of a shadowy figure in the corner of her vision. Someone watching them with eyes of judgment. Was there a spy in their midst? The fight ahead had just begun, and new challenges lurked at the edges of their struggle. Gia could barely contain her thoughts as the crowd around her erupted in excitement. The adrenaline from standing up to Blake still coursed through her veins, but her mind was racing. Who had been watching them? She scanned the audience, her heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. The last thing they needed now was an enemy within their ranks. "Did anyone see that person?" she asked a few members nearby, urgency in her voice. Their faces confused. They shook their heads, mumbling about how it was crazy to think they had a spy. "We can't ignore it," she pressed. "If they're watching us, they want to undermine our every move." After brief discussions about what to do next, Gia motioned for them to take a seat on the plaza steps, trying to center her thoughts. "Listen, everyone, this fight is about more than just our homes. It's about our dignity. Standing here together shows that, but we must keep our eyes open." Mr. Thompson, still fired up, cleared his throat. "Gia's right. We need a strategy. We need to connect with other communities. But let us keep up the pressure on Blake. If we can spread awareness, we may even find out who's helping him." A young woman stepped forward, gripping her sign tightly. "We need a social media campaign. We can document everything and reach people outside our neighborhood. A bigger audience could pressure the city to listen." The idea sparked enthusiasm, and they began tossing around hashtags and campaign names. Gia took a step back and let them brainstorm. This was their moment. She felt pride swelling as they united over their cause, their individual struggles weaving into a collective dream. But as the excitement faded, a cold shiver ran down Gia's spine. The thought of Blake's resources and power loomed over her like a dark cloud. Would they really stand a chance against a man who treated entire lives as mere transactions? The shadows of doubt didn't just linger. They screamed as the chatter crescendoed. A loud crash from a nearby alley silenced the crowd. Eyes wide with fear, they turned toward the sound. A scruffy man staggered into view, his clothes torn and dirt-covered. "Please, you have to help me," he pleaded, breathless. Gia's heart raced. All the hope they had built was now vulnerable to uncertainty. "What happened?" she asked, concern etched on her face. The man's voice quivered, but he pressed on. I was down by Main Street. I overheard something, a deal. They're sending in the bulldozers next week, and they want to intimidate anyone who protests. They're preparing to hit hard. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Gia stepped forward, her voice steadier than she felt. We need to act fast. We can't let fear win. But we need to be strategic. What if we take the fight to their doorstep? Someone shouted. A rally at the construction site. A wave of agreement spread through the crowd, growing louder with every heartbeat. But amidst all the planning, Gia's instincts flared. If the man had risked coming to them, there was something more to his story. Wait, it's nice to have ideas. But what do you really know? She asked, narrowing her eyes. The man's gaze flitted nervously over the gathering. Enough to know you're in danger, and that you need allies. I can help you, but we have to be careful. There are eyes everywhere. As the weight of his words washed over the crowd, a sense of urgency filled the air. They weren't just fighting for their homes anymore. They were fighting for their lives. Gia felt determination harden in her. Then let us find out who else we can trust, she said, locking her gaze on the man. This fight is just beginning, and we can't fight it alone. We need every ally we can get. But deep down, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her. Were they delving deeper into a web of danger? And who could they truly trust? The looming countdown to their next protest began. As the crowd rallied around her idea, Gia couldn't shake the feeling that their struggle was about to get even more dangerous and more personal. The sun dipped low, casting a warm gleam over the plaza, but the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Gia stood tall, determination etched on her face as she watched her friends rally together. But there was an unease that twisted in her stomach. The man was still there, shifting nervously on the edge of the group, eyes darting as if he could see shadows lurking in the corners. She needed more from him. Why did you come to us? Gia pressed, her voice a mix of curiosity and urgency. What's your name? Jordan, he replied, swallowing hard. I used to work for Blake's company. I saw the way they cut corners, the way they planned to bulldoze our lives for profit. And when I heard about your fight, I knew I had to warn you. Gasps rippled through the crowd again. It was one thing to hear rumors, but to have insider knowledge sent chills through Gia. What else do you know? About the plans? The people who support him? Jordan looked around, paranoia etched onto his face. I can give you names. Connections. They're not just targeting you. They're going after anyone who stands in their way. If you organize, they'll come for you and they want to play fair. A murmur of anxiety spread through the group. Some faces turned pale, while others clenched their fists tighter. The notion of powerful forces aiming to silence them shook the collective strength that had been building only moments before. Gia sensed the doubt creeping in, and she couldn't let that happen. No one here is going to back down, Gia declared, her voice strong and unwavering. We will fight. We will make this known. Let us gather everything we have. Jordan, if you can help us connect with these allies, we can show them they can't intimidate us. Right? Allies. His brow furrowed as he nodded, the weight of reality settling heavy on his shoulders. But it won't be easy. They've got eyes everywhere and they'll retaliate. You need to be careful. I've seen people get hurt over this, Gia. I don't want you to end up like them. A gust of wind rustled through the plaza, sending a chill through the group. Gia felt that unsettling feeling again. The stakes had escalated, and she needed to keep her friends focused. We have to stay united. We push harder, and we make our voices louder. This is our home, we have the right to defend it. But as she spoke, the doubts crept back in, gnawing at her resolve. What if they couldn't trust Jordan? What if they put their faith in him and it backfired? Everyone, Mr. Thompson raised his hands, and the crowd quieted. Let us split up into groups. Some of us can create that social media blitz while others start gathering intel with Jordan's help. We'll organize a meeting for all the neighbors to share their experiences. Knowledge is power. A new sense of purpose ignited within the crowd. Gia could see the fire flickering back into their eyes. They were fighters. They had to be. "I'll help with the online campaign," the young woman shouted, her face illuminated by a determination that lit her up like a beacon. Ideas flew around the group. Gia's heart began to swell again. They had the power to band together, to amplify their voices beyond their neighborhood. But at that moment, Gia's phone buzzed in her pocket, cutting through the excitement. She pulled it out and her stomach dropped. It was a message from Blake's office, asking for a private meeting. The room seemed to shrink around her, the air thick with anxiety. Accepting Blake's invitation could be a huge risk, but dodging him might make them seem weak. Would she wield that against her own people? She felt a storm brewing in her chest. "Gia, what is wrong?" Mr. Thompson's voice pulled her back to reality. She took a breath, driving away the panic. "I've just been invited to meet Blake alone," she confessed. Gasps echoed again. "Are you going to go?" Jordan asked, concern etched on his face. Gia struggled to find the words. Trusting Blake could mean danger for her and her allies. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but deep inside, she had an undeniable feeling. This could be the moment that changes everything. What was she willing to risk for the people she fought for? And how would she navigate this dangerous game that Blake was playing? She caught her breath, looking into the eyes of her allies, uncertainty swirling in the depths of her heart. Would this be the chance to turn the tide, or the moment everything collapsed? The answer loomed just out of reach. The crowd's whispers melted into a tense silence, the weight of Gia's revelation hanging in the air like a thick fog. Every pair of eyes fixed on her, their hope and fear intermingling. Her heart raced, and she felt the pressure of countless expectations pressing on her shoulders. "Do you think he's trying to intimidate you?" someone asked, a hint of panic in their voice. "Or maybe he's looking for a way to silence us," another chimed in. Gia took a moment searching for the right words. "I won't let him intimidate me, but we need to be smart. I need to know what he's planning, and I can't do that if I'm afraid." Mr. Thompson stepped forward, an authoritative presence amidst the rising uncertainty. "We trust you, Gia. If you feel this meeting is necessary, then you must go. But let us have a plan. We can't risk losing you." Nervous glances passed through the crowd. Each face reflected concern, loyalty, and a flicker of defiance. Gia nodded, feeling their solidarity like a warm blanket enveloping her. "Okay," she said, grounding her voice. "If I walk into Blake's office, I'll need you all to back me up. We can set up a secure messaging thread. If anything feels off, I'll send a signal to regroup." "Maybe we should have someone tag along," Jordan suggested, his brow furrowing. "I know I don't exactly have a good track record." "But no," Gia interjected firmly. "This is something I have to do alone. He will see that I'm a threat if I appear weak or uncertain. The moment I step through that door, I need to walk in like I own the space." Her friends exchanged looks, understanding the truth behind her words. With that, they drew closer, creating a circle around Gia, their collective energy amplifying the resolve that had sparked the moment Jordan stepped into their lives. Just as they were rallying, her phone vibrated again, pulling her focus. The message read, "Tonight at 7 p.m. My office, 1236 Mercer Avenue. Don't keep me waiting." Anxiety clawed at her gut, but she pushed it aside. "I'll keep you posted," she said, her voice steadying into a determined cadence. "We need to mobilize as many people as we can. Get everyone to share their stories, their fears. They need to understand what's at stake." One by one, the group nodded. Ideas flowed like an electric current, each person bouncing thoughts off one another. It felt like a dam had broken, and what held them back before was washed away in passionate resolve as darkness fell. They dispersed with renewed purpose. Gia couldn't shake the knot in her stomach, but felt the iron grip of determination wrapping tightly around her heart. She had to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was her moment to rise. Later, as evening shadows stretched across her home, she found herself staring at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was no longer the anxious girl who had been afraid of confrontation. This person was fierce and ready. She could hear the echo of her allies behind her, their voices weaving strength into her resolve. But even as she dressed, As she prepared for the meeting, questions thrashed in her mind. What if Blake tried to manipulate her? What if he revealed something that changed the game entirely? And as she stood before the mirror, the last rays of sunlight illuminating her face, a thought flashed. What if he didn't expect her to fight back? What if this encounter was just the beginning? Time ticked away, and the weight of anticipation pressed heavier. As she slipped on her shoes, her phone buzzed again. But this time it was a news alert. Billionaire's secret project exposed. Claims of corruption arise. Gia's heart raced. Blake's empire was crumbling, and she might just be the catalyst. Was this the turning point she had been waiting for? Or the moment she would discover the dark truths lurking beneath the surface? With a final deep breath, she steeled herself for whatever awaited her in Blake's office, feeling the fire within her burn brighter. What crucial secrets lay hidden in the shadows of his power? As Gia stepped into the sleek, cold confines of Blake's office, the air grew heavy with tension. The sound of her heels echoed off the marble floor, a rhythm of determination powering her forward. Everything about this place screamed power: the high ceilings, the imposing desk, and the stunning view that looked over a city she often felt distant from. But today was different. Today, she owned her space. Blake sat behind his desk, a stark silhouette against the window, his face partially shadowed. The look of surprise that flickered across his features quickly transformed into a smug smirk. "Look who decided to show up," he said, the inflection in his voice both mocking and measured. "I'm not here to play games, Blake," Gia replied boldly, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "I want to talk about the project. About everything." He leaned back, folding his arms. "I'm surprised you think you have a say in this matter. You're out of your depth." The dismissal stung, but she countered with a firm gaze. "You think you can intimidate me? You're mistaken." She could see the glint of interest in his eyes, but she pressed on. "Your days of dominating this city through fear are numbered." "The news has begun to spread," she said, recalling the article she'd read. "People are starting to connect the dots about your so-called secret projects. They're not blind, and they're not afraid of you anymore." Blake's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You're playing a dangerous game, Gia. It won't end well for you." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her allies' encouragement wrap around her. "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to expose the truth. If we go public with what we know, you'll lose everything: your power, your fortune, your reputation." Blake's face morphed into a contorted sneer. "You think you can take me down? This city runs on fear. I built it that way." Gia held her ground. "And that's what will bring you crashing down." He waved a dismissive hand, but she pressed forward, fueled by the stories she had gathered from her community, voices of those oppressed, marginalized, and pushed aside. Each one a dagger of truth in her arsenal. "What about the workers you exploit? What about those who believed in you and had their lives ruined because of your greed? You've lost touch with what really matters." The very air in the room felt charged, electric with her bravery. She could see cracks in his facade, a flicker of vulnerability beneath his arrogance. "You're making a mistake, Gia. You don't know what you're dealing with," he warned, the threat hanging like a dark cloud. Gia knew she had to keep pushing. "And you don't know what it's like to be just another pawn in someone else's game. I will not let you silence me or anyone else any longer." A long silence stretched between them, filled only with the tension of unspoken consequences. Slowly, she leaned closer, lowering her voice as if confiding a secret. "If you truly believe you can control this narrative, you're wrong. The people are waking up. They're ready to rise, but they need someone to lead them. I can help you. Together we can change this city for the better." Surprise coiled in his eyes, mingled with a hint of reluctance. Could he see the potential beneath her challenge? Would he entertain the idea, or was he too locked in his own ego to grasp the olive branch she was extending? Her phone buzzed silently in her pocket, a lifeline reminding her of the stakes outside his office walls. She had come too far to back down now. The room was thick with possibility, and with every second that ticked by, Gia felt the power she had harnessed strengthening. Blake leaned back once more, studying her with newfound intensity. You think this is just going to change overnight? You don't understand the depths of my influence. Gia's heart raced, every cliffhanger thought colliding in her mind. Did she dare gamble on the flickering light of redemption in Blake's eyes? Or was this the moment she would truly learn how dark his heart could be? As they faced each other, the weight of the future loomed ahead. What direction would this battle take, and how far was each willing to go to secure their place in the unfolding story? In that charged stillness, secrets still lay waiting to be tapped, but a new question loomed larger than anything else. Would she be able to manipulate the darkness to her favor, or would she become lost in the shadows herself? Gia stepped out of Blake's office, her heart racing, the air buzzing with a mix of adrenaline and anxiety. She had faced him down, ignited a flicker of possibility, but now the real fight awaited. The moment felt pivotal, a clear fork in her path, and the stakes had never been higher. Would her community rise with her, or would fear and complacency prevail? As she walked toward Sweet Auburn, the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a warm glow over the streets. Familiar sights surged with memories: the old bookstore where her father taught her to read, the park where she and Marcus shared countless summer days. Each step weighed heavy with the responsibility of protecting it all. The sound of laughter and music drew her to Gia's soul kitchen, her sanctuary. As she pushed open the door, the delicious scent of fried chicken and collard greens enveloped her. The room hummed with life. Families gathered around tables, neighbors exchanged stories, and children played nearby, all contributing to the soul of their community. In that moment, speaking passionately against Sterling Blake felt surreal, but she had ignited a fire, and it was time to fuel it further. Gia, you made it, Marcus called, his face lighting up with enthusiasm. The buzz on social media is crazy. Everyone's rallying behind you. Her heart swelled at his words. Did you see the article? There's a sudden spotlight on what he's doing, she replied, feeling the energy of the room seep into her bones. That's right. If we keep this momentum, we can pressure the city council to listen. We can change things, he affirmed, determination etched across his face. Gia nodded, glancing around at the familiar faces: the elders whose stories shaped her childhood, the young people whose dreams tinged the air with vibrancy. She felt an overwhelming swell of love and responsibility for them. Tonight, we strategize. I want everyone to share their stories, practical plans. We create our own narrative, she announced, her voice strong and passionate. The room erupted into cheers, the warmth of excitement crackling in the air. Hours slipped by as ideas flowed like water. They laughed, cried, and shared experiences that cut with both joy and pain. Each story illustrated the very reason they couldn't afford to back down. An elder recalled the days of struggle against segregation, while a teenager spoke of fears for her future in a gentrifying city. The room pulsed with emotion, a living testament of humanitarian resilience. Suddenly, Jordan, the man who had warned her of the impending threat, stepped into the kitchen, looking weary yet determined. I've gathered some allies, he announced, eyes ablaze with urgency. They're willing to help, but they're scared. We need to keep this momentum alive without compromising your safety. It's not just about being safe. It's about being smart, Gia replied, her tone heavy with thought. We can't let intimidation stifle our voices. We need to create a roadmap, a legal strategy to fight this. The laughter in the room quieted, understanding blooming in their eyes. The path forward would not just be a battle. It would demand unprecedented unity and cleverness. They discussed tactics, creating partnerships, exploring community outreach, and how to further amplify their messaging. Each voice mattered. Every plan was a step toward moving the needle against a towering force. As they wrapped up the strategy session, a sense of calm urgency settled over them. They formed smaller groups scheduled to connect throughout the week, mobilizing resources and channels of support. Yet amid the excitement, unease skittered through Gia's mind. She knew that Sterling was not the type to back down easily. His empire was built on corruption, and he would fight with everything he had. Finally, as the night wore on, Gia found a moment of quiet to catch her breath. She stepped outside, where the moon bathed Sweet Auburn in a gentle glow. For the first time, she felt a blend of hope and fear intertwine in her chest. She gazed at the bustling blocks, knowing that her community was ready, but would their resolve withstand the impending storm? "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This is our fight." The next day dawned bright and full of promises. Gia woke up roughed by a restless night but driven by a singular purpose. Attending the city council meeting was the next step, a crucial forum for them to voice their concerns, to show how much they meant to each other, how much Sweet Auburn meant. She walked into the council chamber, her heart pounding rapidly as she joined her community members. The air was thick with anticipation, the murmurs of her neighbors echoing around her as they took their seats, resolute in solidarity as the mayor began speaking, inventing bureaucratic terms that felt like a veil over the urgency of the transformative fight. Gia stood up, her heart racing, but now filled with certainty. "Excuse me," she called out, shaking off her nerves. The noise died down, eyes shifting towards her. "This isn't just another meeting. This is our future." She felt the collective energy swell as murmurs turned into low chants behind her. "Our families, our history, this is what we're fighting for. We deserve better." The room pulsated with shared energy, and people began standing with her, raising their signs in unison. It was a beautiful tapestry woven from diverse threads, a resistance made of hearts and souls rising up together. The weight of it made every word she spoke resonate through their walls. The mayor looked taken aback, quickly glancing at Sterling, who scowled from the back. The tide was shifting. This was the pulse of change, a palpable force of will, and she could feel it in her bones. As the meeting unfolded, it was clear that the pressure was mounting. Questions directed towards Sterling ignited serious inquiries, his plans, the mounting pressure from the public, and growing opposition. The council recorded their concerns, bringing in community voices as they fought for preservation in the face of overwhelming pressure. And it was only the beginning. Sweet Auburn would not be buried under Sterling's vast fortune or grand designs. They were rewriting the narrative, and slowly but surely, the cracks in his armor were showing. The council nodded, acknowledging the cacophony of voices, some members visibly uncomfortable at the mounting commotion. Gia felt swimming emotions, fear mingling with exhilaration. This was her moment, and she wouldn't back down. The people stood, their collective heartbeat echoing through the chamber, signaling a message neither could deny. The fight had just begun, yet in their eyes were glimmers of optimism. No one could erase that. They would rise together or fall together. But in that moment, the unity they formed was a raw promise of hope. And as she stepped back amidst her community, she realized they weren't alone anymore. It was a realization she would take to heart, breathing new strength within her. They were the guardians of Sweet Auburn, and they would fight with vigor until the day justice was served. The ending of this chapter was clear but held the promise of another, more powerful story waiting just beyond the horizon. Remember, true fans, this is your moment to support the channel. You need to subscribe now to catch every twist and turn in our next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this breathtaking transformation. Your support means everything. Let us grow together.